In this video, I'll summarize the movie The Devil Wears Prada, released in 2006. As usual, this film stars the talented Anne Hathaway. The story begins with a young woman named Andrea, who has just been called for a job interview at a prestigious fashion magazine called Runway. Upon arrival, Andrea meets the primary assistant, Emily, who emphasizes that anyone working there must always dress fashionably. Emily also mentions how lucky Andrea is to land an interview for the second assistant position, a highly coveted role. Emily explains that if Andrea manages to survive a year in the job, she could secure a position at any fashion magazine in the industry. Shortly after, Emily receives a message that Miranda, the formidable editor-in-chief, is about to arrive at the office. This sends all the employees into a frenzy as they rush to tidy their desks and appearances. When Miranda enters, everyone avoids crossing paths with her directly. Miranda notices Andrea sitting at the assistant's desk and calls her in for the interview. However, Miranda immediately dismisses Andrea, criticizing her lack of fashion knowledge and her unpolished appearance. Feeling offended, Andrea leaves the building. But before she can exit the lobby, Emily calls her back as Miranda has had a change of heart. That evening, Andrea has dinner with her boyfriend, Nate, and her two friends, who recognize Miranda as a powerful figure in the fashion world. Nate, however, seems concerned that Andrea might start adopting the fashionable lifestyle influenced by her new work environment. The next morning, Emily calls Andrea early to ask her to bring Miranda's coffee order. Upon arriving at the office, Emily explains their responsibilities as assistants, which include always being at their desks to answer phone calls. Emily also brags about being invited to Paris with Miranda for the upcoming fall fashion event. She shows Andrea an important company book that must be delivered to Miranda's house every night by someone she trusts. Not long after, a man named Nigel shows up and offers Andrea a pair of high heels, but she refuses to wear them. Suddenly, Miranda calls Andrea into her office to assign her a task, eyeing Andrea's worn-out shoes with disdain. From that moment, Miranda begins giving Andrea various assignments, including personal errands. Despite Andrea's hard work, Miranda appears to have no appreciation for her efforts. Frustrated, Andrea vents to Nate about her demanding boss. One weekend, Andrea meets her father, who lives out of town, for dinner. Her father expresses concern about Andrea's current situation, as she's working in a role far from her dream of becoming a magazine writer. Suddenly, Andrea receives a call from Miranda, asking her to arrange a private jet for her family to return to New York. However, due to a storm in Miami, where Miranda is, Andrea is unable to secure a jet willing to fly that night. This failure angers Miranda, who berates Andrea for her incompetence as a personal assistant. Miranda continues to belittle Andrea for her poor appearance, leaving Andrea deeply hurt. Andrea turns to Nigel to share her frustration, but instead of consoling her, Nigel mocks her for being overly sensitive and advises her to either quit or start putting in maximum effort. Nigel points out that Andrea has not tried hard enough to meet the expectations of her workplace, including dressing appropriately. Motivated by Nigel's words, Andrea borrows fashionable clothes from the company's collection. The next day, Andrea arrives at work with a completely transformed, stylish appearance, shocking Emily and her colleagues. From that moment on, Andrea consistently dresses fashionably and works harder to excel at her job. Gradually, Miranda starts to notice Andrea's improvement and begins to show a hint of approval. One evening, while Andrea is with Nate and her friends, Miranda calls and instructs her to attend a party at a designer named James' apartment to retrieve sketches of his latest dress designs. At the party, James offers Andrea a drink, and she accidentally bumps into a man named Christian. Andrea recognizes him as one of her favorite magazine writers from her school days. The following day, Miranda takes Andrea and Nigel to review James' latest fashion collection, set to feature in Runway magazine. After the meeting, as usual, Miranda assigns Andrea more tasks, including delivering the important company book to her home. When Andrea asks Emily for the house keys, Emily warns her not to speak to anyone inside. However, as Andrea struggles to figure out where to leave the book, Miranda's twin daughters ask her to come upstairs, where she accidentally witnesses an argument between Miranda and her husband. The next morning, Emily scolds Andrea for not following instructions, which resulted in Miranda's frustration. When Andrea meets Miranda, she is immediately tasked with finding an unpublished Harry Potter novel for Miranda's twin daughters by 3 p.m. Additionally, Miranda orders Andrea to pick up steak for her lunch, giving her only 15 minutes to complete both tasks. Feeling desperate, Andrea asks Christian for help locating the unreleased novel. However, the task seems nearly impossible. Amid the pressure, Miranda warns Andrea that failing to fulfill her demands will result in her termination. Frustrated, Andrea tells Nate that she plans to quit Runway. However, Christian suddenly calls to inform her that he managed to obtain the unpublished Harry Potter novel from a friend. Andrea meets Christian at a restaurant, as promised to collect the novel, successfully preventing Miranda from firing her. This, however, disappoints Nate, who is hoping Andrea would leave her job and find a different career. A few days later, Emily catches a severe flu. That evening, as Andrea is about to leave to celebrate Nate's birthday with friends, Miranda calls and asks her to accompany Emily to an upcoming runway event that night. Emily hands Andrea a guest list she must memorize to assist Miranda with introductions at the party. Despite Emily's illness, Andrea successfully helps Miranda during the event by remembering a crucial guest's name. After completing her work, Andrea rushes to Nate's birthday celebration, but Nate is visibly upset. He feels Andrea is prioritizing her job over their relationship. The tension grows between them, and Andrea begins to feel the strain on her personal life. Not long after, Miranda summons Andrea to inform her that she will be going to Paris Fashion Week to replace Emily, who is still unwell. Initially, Andrea hesitates, not wanting to disappoint Emily. However, she realizes she must comply with Miranda's orders. From that moment, Miranda begins placing her handbag and coat on Emily's desk for Andrea to handle, solidifying Andrea's new responsibilities. Reluctantly, Andrea calls Emily, who is completing another task for Miranda, to inform her about the Paris trip. Shocked and distracted by the news, Emily ends up in a car accident. At the hospital, Andrea visits Emily and confesses what happened with Miranda. Emily, already upset by her condition, becomes furious at Andrea. Guilt-ridden, Andrea feels terrible for her role in the situation, but knows she cannot defy Miranda. Later that night, Andrea attends an art gallery exhibition hosted by her friend Lily. At the event, she unexpectedly runs into Christian, who starts flirting with her. He suddenly kisses her on the cheek, a moment that Lily witnesses. Angered by what she sees, Lily confronts Andrea, accusing her of becoming someone unrecognizable, a fashionable woman drawn to other men despite having a boyfriend. To make matters worse, Nate arrives during the confrontation. Hearing about Andrea's decision to go to Paris, he expresses his disappointment. Their argument escalates, and Nate points out how much Andrea has changed since starting her job. Ultimately, he decides to end their relationship, believing Andrea is willing to sacrifice everything for her career. A few days later, Andrea, Miranda, and Nigel arrive in Paris for the fashion show, where they meet key figures from the fashion industry. Christian also appears at the event and invites Andrea to have dinner with him that evening. Before Andrea heads out to meet Christian, Nigel stops by her room to share some exciting news. Miranda has promised to promote him to the position of creative director at James, thanks to the designer's growing popularity and the influx of investors planning to establish a new company outside of Runway. At the restaurant, Christian unexpectedly reveals shocking news. The owner of Runway plans to replace Miranda as editor-in-chief with someone named Jocelyn, and this announcement will coincide with James' celebration party the following night. The next morning, Andrea, concerned that Miranda is unaware of the situation, rushes to Miranda's room, only to find her in a meeting with the owner of Runway. Andrea decides to inform Miranda before James' party begins, but Miranda seems unfazed by the news. At the party, during her speech, Miranda congratulates James on his success and the launch of his new company. She then announces Jocelyn as the new creative director of James, shocking Nigel, who had been expecting the promotion himself. As they leave the party, Miranda reveals to Andrea that she already knew about the plan to replace her with Jocelyn. To secure her position, Miranda promoted Jocelyn to James' company, ensuring that the Runway owner would have no reason to replace her. Andrea is appalled by Miranda's actions, realizing that she deliberately sacrificed Nigel's career to protect her own. Overwhelmed by anger and disillusionment, Andrea decides to quit Runway and leave Miranda. A few days later, Andrea meets Nate at a restaurant to apologize for her behavior and the way she neglected him and her friends for a job that didn't align with her dreams. She expresses deep regret for prioritizing her work over her personal relationships. Shortly afterward, Andrea applies for a new job as a writer at a magazine. During the interview, the editor mentions receiving a fax from Miranda criticizing Andrea, but decides to hire her anyway, recognizing Andrea's resilience and experience working under Miranda. Afterward, Andrea remembers Emily and calls to offer her all the designer clothes she received from Paris. While walking past Runway, Andrea spots Miranda from a distance. However, she feels no resentment, having moved on from her past experiences. And that wraps up our summary of The Devil Wears Prada. This movie beautifully captures the tension between ambition and personal values, showing how challenging it can be to stay true to yourself in a high-pressure, competitive world. Andrea's journey reminds us all of the importance of balance, pursuing your dreams without losing sight of who you are and what truly matters. I hope you enjoyed this recap and found it both entertaining and insightful. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more movie. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care!